Greetings, my name is Ryan Nix. I am a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. Joining me here today is Eduardo. Eduardo, say hi.
Hi Ryan, I'm a solutions architect with AWS. Hello everyone, nice to meet you.
Eduardo, we have a lot of customers who are investing in IBM solutions, specifically IBM Cloud Paks. They're bringing those investments from on-premises to AWS. And those implementations run on top of OpenShift. So when a customer comes to AWS, the question I get a lot is, what does it look like when I run this on top of Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS or ROSA, the managed version of OpenShift? Is it supported? And what are some of the building blocks that are underpinning the platform?
Right, so IBM has different cloud packs, and they all have slightly different requirements when it comes to OpenShift, but they all run on OpenShift.
Okay, so let's zoom in on one specific one. Let's talk about maybe IBM Cloud Pak for integration as an example.
Right, so if you're an IBM customer that has IBM integration software, IBM middleware like MQ or App Connect, there is a Cloud Pak specifically for that, which is called Cloud Pak for integration. And you can deploy that on Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS, on ROSA.
Okay, so we're going to take a AWS region, we'll put a VPC down. This will typically be a multi-AZ implementation, so there'll be 3 availability zones, subnets in each AZ, and then we'll deploy a OpenShift cluster, in this case a ROSA cluster, providing the OpenShift layer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. Do all Cloud Paks support ROSA? Managed OpenShift?
Not all of them, but most of them do. So it's always important to refer to the IBM documentation to see which Cloud Paks are already supporting ROSA. Cloud Pak for integration is one that actually does.
Data does as well.
Data does
Business
as well.
automation does as well. I think one of the ones that doesn't is probably security.
Security,
I think is still in the
security
process.
still is in the process.
Okay, but Cloud Pak for integration definitely has support for OpenShift across the board, self-managed as well as managed. So we have that ROSA layer. The Cloud Pak is essentially just a collection of containerized workloads. What's actually under the hood? What are the IBM software components there?
So IBM has bundled together their software stack that has similar use cases. So in this case, it's all about middleware integration software. So customers that build applications that use asynchronous architectures, and their architecture is built using MQ as a backbone for messaging. You know, there is a containerized version of MQ that is a part of Cloud Pak for integration. There are applications that use IBM API Connect to expose APIs to the public internet or to partners. So API Connect is also available as part of Cloud Pak for integration. Likewise with App Connect Enterprise, where you can have enterprise flows to do message transformation, message routing between different systems. So that's also part of Cloud Pak for integration, just as also IBM Data Power Gateway, Event Streams, and Aspera HSTS.
Now, a lot of these components are common day cloud-based applications. You can get an AWS service to do similar components of this. I think this is more a case of I have an existing investment in these systems. They're already part of my on-premises environment. And I don't want to have to go through the journey of refactoring or rebuilding them. I want to take advantage of the same experience that I have on premises when I bring it to the cloud. So it's reinvestment of what I already have.
It's because these are integration components, so you need to imagine that it's going to be a whole ecosystem of applications that are surrounding this and using these integration components to route messages and exchange messages between different applications, different platforms. So it's not just an easy drag and drop. You have to consider the entire ecosystem as we're migrating.
So when we deal with a lot of these components, I imagine that there's a storage layer at play, and I'm assuming it's something that is a shared storage component, something like a platform that's going to share storage with OpenShift, and you're going to see persistent volume claims.
Absolutely, yes. So in each of these components, they might have different storage requirements. So I'll just zoom in on MQ, for example, right? MQ, depending on the number of flows of messages that you have on MQ, that's going to determine what type of storage you'll want to use with MQ, right? So if we want to zoom in at the different storage options available.
So one storage option that I commonly see is the older Red Hat ODF or OpenShift Data Foundation, that's now going through a rebranding exercise. It's becoming IBM Storage Fusion. And one of the things we need to be aware of here is with OpenShift, you can absolutely use IBM Storage Fusion, but in order to take advantage of ROSA as a managed OpenShift, you do need a managed version of the storage. So in the context of this, IBM Cloud Pak for Integration does support IBM Storage Fusion as well as the managed version thereof. But this is not the only storage layer. I think what we'll do is we're going to spend some time focusing on this one, and then we'll come back to what are some of the other options.
Yes.
Just be aware that with this Cloud Pak specifically, customers do have some choice. They could use IBM Storage Fusion, they could use, which is the rebranding of ODF. I believe you've got EFS as well.
Correct.
FSX NetApp, is that available?
Coming.
Coming, okay.
Coming.
So as it stands right now,
yes.
no.
EFS
You've got
and
EFS. In this case, you'll notice that if you're going for the managed IBM Storage Fusion, it's going to trigger a additional ROSA OpenShift cluster inside the customer account. And this storage cluster could service multiple application workloads or multiple other OpenShift environments with containers running on it. In this diagram, we've only got the one consuming environment, the Cloud Pak for Integration cluster, but it could be a bit more there, so a bit of reuse of that infrastructure, if you will. Not everything here is going to talk to this storage. We might find potentially some other workloads that are going to go to a relational database. Is that correct?
So imagine that you're building an event-driven architecture with Cloud Pak for Integration, right? You have a mobile app, you're communicating to a backend API, you're sending some payload, and then you have to do some message transformation, and you want to persist that on a relational database or a NoSQL database. So we can use some of our AWS services like our managed database service to persist those kind of payloads that are coming from mobile applications or web applications.
So this is essentially an AWS native service that we're going to deploy in the environment to complement what I have running inside my IBM Cloud Pak or inside OpenShift. The connections, the information is going to take the secrets, the credentials needed to connect to that database stored inside OpenShift, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Talk to me about, is this the only option? I'm assuming that from a relational database perspective, customers do have choice, and you could see other databases as well, potentially.
Sure, yes. Things like App Connect Enterprise, you can even connect directly to DynamoDB, so there are different options available for customers.
Okay, so really focus here is on integration.
Yes.
Wherever your data is coming from, you're going to have a myriad of connectors that you can link to them and pull the data in.
Correct.
From a single sign-on role-based access control securities point of view, I typically see customers use things like a LDAP service, something like a IBM Verify or a Microsoft Active Directory. What does that look like when we bring it to AWS?
Sure. So you have to think about in terms of OpenShift security. So you want to protect access to your OpenShift cluster, who can access and do what inside OpenShift. And because Cloud Pak in itself, it's also a platform. It also has an administrative UI. You also can control access to Cloud Pak itself to determine who can access which components.
But the user accounts, the groups, the principals, where would they live?
They would all live in some kind of an LDAP or an Active Directory, or you can even integrate with OpenID. So you can even use things like Amazon Cognito.
Okay. From an LDAP perspective, Active Directory, we could use the AWS directory services and put that
absolutely.
down. And again, this is, as you correctly pointed out, you've got a lot of options here. You'd need to go into OpenShift and configure what is the type of identity provider that you're interacting with. It's not just the users and groups inside that directory provider. The OpenShift platform as well as the Cloud Pak do have roles and permissions and RBAC groupings that would be relevant to the different products over here. What are we missing? We've got some things here. We've got a couple of networks over here. There's at least 3
so
VPCs.
It's a very common use case where you're going to have these systems that are using Cloud Pak for Integration to talk to each other, and they're sitting on different network layers. They're sitting on different Amazon VPCs, or some of them might be on-prem. So we need something to connect all of these things together through the network.
And what do you recommend?
So that's where we see a lot of usage of transit gateway, because it really simplifies the way that we can route between all these different network layers. So imagine that you have something that allows you to communicate with all the different VPCs in the case that we are seeing here, our shared VPC services, our relational database VPC, and our cluster VPC. So all of them would be connected through transit gateway, so to allow routing to go back and forth from all the VPCs.
So when a customer comes to me and says, I'm looking at migrating IBM Cloud Pak for integration, it's not a trivial singular workload. This is really a collection of workloads. If you are looking at the newer containerized version of these Cloud Paks or these IBM software solutions, there is OpenShift at play. There are some additional considerations such as, what storage layer am I going to go for? What does that look like on AWS? When we talk about this from a licensing, a costing perspective, Eduardo, there is a tool where you can log into the IBM portal and you can see what are all of the components. These are not the only knobs and dials. There's a lot of additional. For example, a customer could say, I've got DB2 in my environment and I could have DB2 in here. There could be something like data stage in the background here. So what you've listed here, that's not the length and breadth of IBM Cloud Pak for integration. There's a lot of other components. And how do I start a costing exercise and how do I identify which licenses I need?
Yeah, so essentially that's going to start from the workloads that you have running on your own premises environment or whatever it is that you're migrating to AWS. We need to dive deep and analyze how many servers you have, how many instances of, let's say, IBM MQ you have running, what kind of licensing model you have with IBM, and if you're bringing your own license to AWS or if you're purchasing Cloud Pak for integration as a brand new software product from IBM. So there will be different variables there, but essentially we want to look at the size of your current environment so that we can go through the sizing exercise to determine how many EC2 instances do we need on your OpenShift cluster to support the workloads that you are migrating, how many users will be accessing, how many applications will be connecting to this environment, so that we can calculate the amount of memory and CPU that you're going to need on AWS to run your workloads, and then we can determine from an IBM licensing point of view how many licenses you need, but also what's going to be your AWS infrastructure cost to run this Cloud Pak for integration on AWS.
Absolute starting point. Without any of that information, I'm assuming we start with what does a base ROSA OpenShift cluster look like on AWS, and there's a well-documented sort of cost footprint there. Eduardo, thank you very much, and a pleasure having you here as always.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.